is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome to the NFL Pick 6 show, week 16, down the quarter pole. We come down the stretch. Still a few more weeks. Week 15 just finished yesterday. And we're recording this, of course, on a you guys are powering on through, I'm sure.
I was writing up week 16 content during week 15 still. It was a lot of pain.
Yeah, I have you seen your family? I know you had a tweet about have you seen the family since in the last few days or week, or are they doing okay? Have you sent a letter of some sort?
Rumor is they're on Christmas break. I don't know.
That, of course, is the voice of Rich Hribar. You all know that. Sharp football analysis. Also joining us, John Daigle, NBC Sports, a good football show podcast. How about yourself, Daigle? Are you it feels like you have your tweets all the time with the longest season. That was the longest week, right? And it feels like it hasn't stopped. This is all
anytime I say that as well, I always love how Rich always follows it up and says factually correct. And so I will say right now that truly was the longest week ever.
Yeah. How did you guys do? Did you move on in your season long? Did you crush in DFS? How did it work for you, Daigle?
It was a good week. Had a good week in DFS. Everything we talked about, I played, including getting down cheap to Jeff Wilson, seeing that there weren't many other options and knew I could backdoor some touchdowns. That's the only reason literally you play Jeff Wilson, even though he did look as healthy as he's looked since he returned from injury. But nonetheless, yeah, double stacks with Rodgers. As we know, if you play Rodgers and Adams, not Contrarian. If you add 1% MVS, though, where we talked about where the Ravens allow targets, now we're cooking with gas. Was in second until 3 minutes remaining and most of the mid-stake single entry contest, and then had a Tyler Huntley team sneak up out of nowhere and couldn't even be mad because Tyler Huntley was an awesome play at 3%. So still paid for the Christmas gifts for the second week in a row, going strong. If you had a fun time in week 15, just wait for this week because it's even worse.
Huntley, especially if you pair him with Andrews went nuts once again. How about yourself, Rich? How did week 15 go for you?
It was all right. It was a mixed bag. I mean, DFS was fine. I didn't lose any money, so that's always a plus. And then we were 50-50 in season-long stuff. There were some teams that were absolutely hot garbage, especially one team that I thought was incredible. It just had all single-digit scores this week. That's just the way it went. But then I had some that were just so-so pop off because that's the way this week was too. So we pick up the pieces. We go on to week 16. We try to make some championships and get out of here.
The FFPC main event team I drafted were 4-for-4 footballs. Ryan Noonan and Connor Allen is currently in 73rd place overall. With 2 weeks remaining. One time at God or whatever existence you believe in. Please.
What does that pay?
It starts out 1K at 125. What's first place of main event, Reeves? 250?
It's 200. Is it 500? It might be.
I think it may be 500 this year, 500K. Yeah. And we're in 73rd overall place, just 2 weeks remaining. No injuries or COVID. I don't want to say it out loud because we're kind of getting lucky right now. So we have a good team with backups ready to go, including backup cornerbacks and kickers because we stocked up before the last week of free agency. So we're in a good place right now. We just one time. We needed a little luck here for the next 2 weeks.
It's like a rotisserie style. Is that's the way I understand it, or is it
the way the playoffs work? Is that the final 3 weeks? It comes down to it. Just a summary. It adds your average score and then your total points for the next 3 weeks. And then, we even had a good week we had Tua, we had Austin Eckler, we had Dalton Schultz in a flex because we had to start him. We had Jeff Wilson and all the guys we had to pull off our bench went off. So we had a very good week, honestly.
Yeah, you're trying to run into the Kamara game like last year. Who's going to give us the Christmas gift of the 6 touchdowns? Will it be Jonathan Taylor?
I'm just impressed. You found a team that's dodged injuries and COVID and everything that's going on. You're like Neo from the Matrix there.
I'm impressed too. I'm not Neo. I'm as shocked as you.
All right, and this is your first time on the show. You're not aware of our format. We're going to dive into just a second. Of course, you focus on the main slate. There are games on Thursday, Sunday night, Monday night, Saturday night. We focus on the main slate. We break it down specifically those 3 featured games. After that, we run it back. Talk about our favorite plays, position by position, amongst games that we did not yet break down. The number one game that we're starting with this week is the Rams. The Rams at Minnesota. 49 is the total. Minnesota's a 3-point favorite. John, I'll start with you. The most projected plays as far as pace of play according to Derek Carty's The Blitz. I always look at that. 131.3 plays projected. It has Cooper Kupp, which I don't know. I assume we'll have money to pay for Cooper Kupp by the time Sunday rolls around. I'm just kind of sort of guessing. We'll see. John, that's kind of a good place to start, I suppose. Cooper Kupp, good. And in a dome this time of year is nice. And also a perfect run back as far as Jefferson as well. Nobody else is going to see this coming to the slate, right? This is kind of sneaky.
Well, how about just being Cooper Kupp? Even if he was outdoors in snow, what about if he's just Cooper Kupp? That's good enough this year. And also just setting up Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. I don't know how many people are going to pay up at running back this week as well. Everyone's already talking about the cheapies. Of course, FanDuel, we'll talk about the James Robinson situation, but like DraftKings didn't do anything with James Robinson, bumped him up only $500. Everyone's talking about Justin Jackson, even though, again, we'll talk about him in a bit. He could have goal line carry siphon and not even matter, even though he is in a good spot. So I don't know how many people actually want to pay up for Dalvin Cook. So it's probably a situation where everyone starts their builds with expensive receivers, starting with Cooper Kupp and then going down at running back, which makes it really interesting as well. But just for it's not even just the Rams. Let's start with the Vikings here, because we're also off primetime flop lag with 87 freaking yards passing for Kirk Cousins. And whether it's the primetime narrative or not, I have no idea. It's just the fact that if we get some pushback here, like it's not just a situation where you can avoid or fade Dalvin Cook. You can also go right back to Kirk Cousins in these spots we always talk about where the target share is concerted. Like we know where he goes. He only goes to Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne right now, assuming Adam Thielen's out. So whether it's productive or not, whether he actually produces, we don't know, but at least we know where he goes to when he does produce. And so just in fading Dalvin Cook, which again, Reeves talked about this, the reason we weren't playing Rashad Penny, not only because you didn't want to play him in an anomaly spot after he had all career highs, but because the Rams have allowed 3.7 yards per carry this year. You could say the same for Dalvin Cook, even though Dalvin Cook has averaged 30 touches in his last 2 games since returning from injury. But you can also say, okay, I can also get off Dalvin Cook and pay up for Justin Jefferson. I wonder, I know you don't do ownership on Wednesday, but I wonder where the field's going right now, since Justin Jefferson obviously is an awesome spot. You can skinny stack him with Cooper Kupp as well, averaging 11.5 targets in his last 6 games. And his last 2 target shares of 48% and 41%, scored in back-to-back starts, but he hasn't gone over 80 yards in the last 2 games. So this is not a situation to where like when it corrects itself with that target share, it's 100 yards and a touchdown. It's one where he literally breaks the dam. And so, yeah, I'd be more comfortable choosing Justin Jefferson significantly over Dalvin Cook, but I don't know where the field's going right now.
So I did run, and again, like Wednesday night, like you said, as far as running optimals and all that, taking that all into account, I capped my ownership percentage on DK at 60%. I capped my ownership on FanDuel at 50%, just get a different shuffle. And both Justin Jefferson hit both thresholds, Jefferson and Kupp, 50% on FanDuel, both of them hit it. And on DK, same deal. Things will, of course, change, but like I imagine we will have some money to spend. Thoughts there, Rich, as far as your big spend on the Minnesota side? Would you start with Cook first or Jefferson first? And then, of course, ownership obviously could come into effect depending on how things roll around on Sunday. But just as far as, optimal raw points, who do you think is more likely to have a better path to success? Is it Jefferson or is it Cook?
Definitely Jefferson. I mean, you look at, we already know Jalen Ramsey doesn't shadow anybody this year. He plays that star position. We don't know if Thielen's going to play, but even if Thielen does play in the 4 games prior to Thielen getting hurt, I mean, Justin Jefferson had 31%, 29%, 28%, and 35% of the team targets. So that all still existed too as well. It's not like just these 48 and 45% target shares he's had the past 2 weeks need to be sticky. I mean, he was getting jammed with targets even before Thielen got hurt. The Rams actually surprisingly are 25th in the league in points allowed to opposing wide receiver ones too, probably because Jalen Ramsey doesn't move around. So there's an opportunity here. They don't give a lot of touchdowns to wide receivers though, which is the only thing that's kind of sticky. That's kind of been good for them like the entire season. Just a 2.3% touchdown rate to opposing wide receivers at 2nd in the NFL. But they will give up some chunk plays and splash yardage. So that leads to like Jefferson. Cook is more of just like the contrarian play, like Daigle set up. I mean, there's really nothing from an objective angle, except for he's like the one guy to pay up for, assuming we don't have Austin Eckler. The touch share has been there. Alexander Madison's obviously been out the last 2 weeks. But he's still a guy that's going to collect a lot of touches even when Madison is there. So you just hope you get into the box because the Rams run D has been good. The problem with Dalvin Cook, he has the Joe Mixon kind of problem, right? Like he just doesn't catch enough passes. Like he's awesome, but like, he has 6 games this year with 2 or fewer catches. He's had more than 3 catches in just 2 games. Like he's just not catching the football like he was 2 years ago. Last year he didn't catch football a lot either. He's just been a touchdown maven until this season. But these are the 2 teams in the NFL. They're first and second in passing touchdown rate in the NFL. So hopefully we get some fireworks. Hopefully that leads to all of our play count that Cardi's got projected, and we can get a lot of fireworks through the air.
Alexander Madison it's so odd the way you mentioned Dalvin Cook, especially in the last 2 games, with those high target shares. It's almost like the Devontae Adams effect where Justin Jefferson is soaking up everything. And we do have questions if it can keep up 40%. But like you said, if it goes back to normal, like it was 30% before, so who cares? But even Alexander Madison had 16 targets in his 3 spot starts for Dalvin Cook. Whereas like you mentioned, Dalvin Cook, they're just not using in the passing game for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Drives me crazy.
You're starting a stack. You're starting a stack in this game. You're starting with Stafford or you're starting with Cousins? Who's your quarterback?
Cousins, knowing that I could also be crying Sunday afternoon. But I like the double stacks with Cousin. I still think KJ Osborne's sneaky as well. Yes, Justin Jefferson out-targeted him significantly. KJ Osborne finished with just 3 points, despite running the second most routes, as he's going to keep doing without Adam Thielen. But again, we know where the ball's going to go. So it's a good bounce back spot if you can mentally get there. We have to see how the rest of the field shakes out in those mid-priced receivers, since it seems like we're going to get a few chalk spots around other teams we'll talk about when we get to positional plays.
Rich, if you have a similar thought or a contrarian thought, or just it's kind of a coin toss and you can choose your own adventure, both are perfectly fine. Also, talk about the Rams, their backfield, Henderson and Sonny Michel.
Yeah, I'll probably in small field stuff just stack this both ways. See if I can hit something at 1 o'clock and then kind of move on from there. See how I need to adjust those teams throughout the course of the afternoon. The Rams backfield kind of played out like we thought. Darrell Henderson had basically missed the previous 2 weeks. He had just gotten activated off COVID just 3 days before the game. So it wasn't like we were really expecting him to do a lot, but there were also, paired with the whispers of, Sean McVay talking up Sonny Michel's interior rushing, all that kind of signaled that it was going to be a Michel night, and it was. He played 48 snaps compared to 18 for Darrell Henderson. He used that to his advantage at 115 total yards. This is a spot that we would look at. I mean, Minnesota 31st in the NFL in EPA against the run. They have allowed 4.4 yards per carry to backs. That's 22nd. They're 19th in rushing points allowed per game. They're 18th in receiving points allowed per game to backfields. The only thing that when you play Rams running backs, and if you were playing Darrell Henderson earlier in the year, but one thing you always have to remember is that the Rams lead the NFL in passing rate inside the 5-yard line. They lead the NFL in passing rate inside the 10-yard line, and they're second in passing rate inside the red zone. Now that McVay's got his new boy toy and Matthew Stafford, full confidence in the passing game in the red zone. When under Jared Goff the past 2 years, they were a bottom 5 team in all those categories. So we've got a lot of like the varsity blues running back going on with like these Rams running backs. They better score from long distance because they don't get a lot of freebies. Those are all Cooper Kupps.
Nicely done with the varsity blues reference. Same price, incidentally, on FanDuel as far as Henderson versus Michel, and on DK, I think we have Michel a tick cheaper. Yeah, he's 5.5 on DK and 5.7 for Henderson. When there to add on there?
Yeah, when Jay Glazer, he doesn't come around often this year in particular, but when he comes around, when Omar starts walking around the corner whistling "Farmer in the Dell," you better perk up and listen. And boy, did he lay that Sonny Michel news 10 minutes to lineup lock out of nowhere. In all single entries, even a 2-game slate, Sonny Michel was only 17% rostered last night, just because the news came in so late. But Jay Glazer has just been on it this year.
Are they still doing that homage there in Baltimore for Omar coming? I remember that was a thing they did when the actor passed.
I think they are for the whole. I thought they were doing it for the whole year, but
now they got Snoop.
Stop it now.
Yeah, they should keep that. Sure.
Now they're just disrespecting his legacy.
Oh, Baltimore, you mean?
Yeah, because they're bad. They're a bad football team.
Yeah, they're not very good. They got a fun quarterback though.
Even though they do have Snoop under center now as well, so they have Omar and Snoop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Didn't somebody, who was it that tweeted out there was Snoop Dogg? Like they put the wrong. They put Snoop Dogg.
Well, who was it? It had to be Rap, wasn't it?
It was Rap Sheet.
Yeah, of course it was. Oh,
it was someone who has never watched one single episode of The Wire.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. I will say I want to play some Odell here because I don't know if you guys remember back in week 4 when we were on the Odell versus Vikings train. I want some retribution for a quarterback that can throw it to him when he's open. So I want to chase my week 4 Odell points that I was promised in week 4, and I want them here in week 16.
That's a sneaky revenge, like versus say, like the corners are like, yeah, we shut you down. Well, now I actually got somebody that's capable of throwing the ball to me. Yeah, all right, I'm sold. Do we have to say anything about Kupp? Like, what's to say here? Week 16, he might be breaking all the all-time receiver records.
The only thing bad about Cooper Kupp is that terrible beard he has. It's like it. It's like the only thing bad about him.
The very first time I heard him talk, did you guys hear him talk before? I've never one of the best players in all the NFL, and like he broke down that play. I don't, you probably saw the clip where he's breaking down the play, and I never heard that voice before. I was like, okay, that's how Cooper Kupp sounds, and of course it was pretty cool how he broke down the play.
The NFL is terrible at marketing their stars outside of quarterbacks. I mean, it's not surprising.
Yeah, like they're wearing helmets.
They're lucky Patrick Mahomes. They're lucky Patrick Mahomes is so good. Otherwise, we would only know about his brother and that he puts ketchup on macaroni and cheese. That's it.
Oh, but yeah. Did you see his brother get dunked on Twitter about a week ago?
Buddy,
or so?
I saw everything about his brother. Yep.
Yeah. Anything else that's worth highlighting in this game? John, did you have a thought as far as like Jefferson and Beckham? Of course, you can throw those guys in tournaments, especially if you're stacking this game up. You want to double stack as far as the Stafford side. Anything else before we move on? This is clearly the best game, right? This is the best game in the slate and the clear and obvious studs.
We think so. Lots of good games that could fail this week. I'm very nervous for football this week.
I mean, did anyone watch football last week? There's a clear path to failure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, yeah.
But even like some of the most exciting games, I'm somewhat worried about. Like, what if Kyler's injured? What if like the Bengals Ravens game we're about to talk about? There's some really reason it could go wrong there. Stafford has been good, fortunately, in back-to-back games against the Cardinals and Jaguars. This past game, it took 3 quarters to finally get there. But nonetheless, he still got there. But yeah, hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully everything's good to go. In their last 4 games, even with one sprinkled in where Beckham was a part-time player, he's still basically matching Van Jefferson across the way. 3 end zone targets each. 14 catches Beckham has to Van Jefferson's 13. The air yards, 20 more for Beckham, aren't enough to distinguish one or the other. And so, yeah, like you're probably playing Beckham for the higher ceiling, but I do wonder if he has genuinely like only 2 or 3 points of a higher ceiling, which should then make us more on Van Jefferson if he comes in 10%, 15% less rostered, kind of like the Mike Evans, Chris Godwin situation beforehand that we always ran into. So just something I'll be watching, just seeing where their ownership goes on Sunday.
You mentioned Kyler. You're forgiven. He's not on the main slate. He's on Saturday night. I had no idea he was potentially injured. I have not looked at the Saturday night slate. Is he dinged?
No, he's probably fine, but he did bang up his ankle on that very last play of the game against the Rams. And then, they looked like shit this past week. So that's about it. That's my only injury analysis.
Yeah, and they pulled him, like the game was essentially over, but they usually keep the guy out. It was like an 18-point lead, like 3 minutes to go. And
the game will typically be over when you kick field goal down 17-0 and 24-3. So yeah, the game's over.
They thought like it's Detroit. We can't lose. Something is going to happen where things are going to change. And it just turns out, no, that's not how it went. You got anything else, Richard, or should we move on to this?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right. Game number 2. Interesting because we talked about the game with the Rams and Minnesota, the most projected plays in the slate. Guess what? This one has the least projected according to Derek Carty's splits. Despite that, there are some definitely plays. We'll talk about Baltimore at Cincinnati minus 2.5. 45 total. We don't know about Lamar. Lamar, by the way, if he goes, he's 6'9" on DK. It's a really cheap Lamar price for DK. Of course, Huntley is he's 6K on DK, 7.5 on FanDuel. Lamar 7.8 on FanDuel. I'll throw it to you, Rich. We're just guessing. You want to take both routes, or who do you expect to be under center for Baltimore come Sunday?
If Lamar can play, I would assume that they're going to push for him to play. I mean, we don't want a limited Lamar playing on any level, though. I know that because, look at the production that he has that comes from rushing. 37% of his points are rushing points on the year. He's also 25th in the league in passing points per attempt. So let's not ride that train, because, as a passer for fantasy, he's on par with Taylor Heineke and Ben Roethlisberger. So let's not try to live that way. So we'd rather at least just have, Huntley if it's going to be 100% quarterback, but, it remains to be seen. He didn't practice today on Wednesday, but we'll see what happens. And he wasn't good when these teams played earlier in the season. I mean, the Bengals pressured Lamar Jackson on 45% of his dropbacks in that game. It was the fourth highest rate in the league. Lamar was just 4 of 10 passing under pressure in that game for 65 yards. He was really kind of awful. It was kind of like the start of like the downward trend for Lamar Jackson, like on the course of the season. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really focused on him. I like this Bengals side because I'm curious to see just what's going to happen. I mean, I remember this same conversation, Dean. You led the conversation the same way. This game's projected for the fewest plays.
Yeah.
But, because, there's a couple of things that are in play here. One, the Ravens run a ton of plays because they run the ball a lot, and they run the ball a lot with their quarterbacks. The Bengals don't run a lot of plays because they either run the ball 3 times and then punt, or they score from 60 yards out, like in like 2 plays. That's like what they do. They lead the NFL in touchdowns from outside the red zone. That's why they're so bad in like terms of getting to the red zone. They're actually really good in the red zone when they do get there. But they're like 30th in red zone plays because they lead the NFL in touchdowns from outside the red zone. But remember when we had this talk about this game earlier in the year, we talked about, if the Bengals want to blitz Joe Burrow, like it's going to be a nightmare. And, they did that. They came out, they blitzed him 39% of the time. It was the 3rd highest blitz rate that week, and Joe Burrow torched them. Since that game, Joe Burrow has been blitzed only Patrick Mahomes has been blitzed less than Joe Burrow. Everyone saw that game and was like, nope, ain't doing that. Like, we ain't going to blitz him no more. So it's going to be real curious to see what the Ravens do, because they did not blitz Aaron Rodgers. They did not. They were like, nope, we're not going to blitz Aaron Rodgers at all. We're going to drop back, try to play coverage, have 7 guys guard Devontae Adams, see if that works. So it's going to be really interesting to see if the Ravens kind of adjust to what got them absolutely blitzcragged in that week 7 meeting. And like the rest of the league is adapted to not sending pressure at Joe Burrow in this game.
Who is the DC for Baltimore? And is it like a crusty old guy with his arms crossed? And
Wink Martindale.
Is he stubborn, or is he willing to say like, hey, maybe I was wrong, let's try something different? Do we know?
It's tough because it's part of like who they are. Like their linebackers aren't good in coverage. So like they kind of have to rush those guys. Like like it's the way they constructed their team, but they've had so many injuries in the back end that it's just, they just don't have like the guys to play man coverage. So I don't know if they will continue to do it or not, or just who they are, but their personnel kind of dictates that they still want to use those linebackers to rush the passer.
So you talked about the Odell Beckham revenge game. This is also a Reeves revenge game, since you did so well on this slate, which I understand week 5 seems like 2 years ago, but hey, we were successful one time. Yeah, it was the last time they played. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts here, John? Your thoughts as far as how they're going to handle Burrow there, the defense for Baltimore, but nonetheless, either way, you can certainly play the angle of they're just going to do the same thing, and Burrow's going to have a shot to really get loose. And his possible pairings, his likely pairings, your favorite pairing, I assume, is Jamar Chase, especially for the long ball. Higgins certainly in play. Boyd, I think, is kind of a distant third. I'm not sure if that changed throughout the season. Is that kind of where you're at as well?
Yeah, Boyd has popped up the last couple of games. The issue is, even if we get Lamar, it's not only if we get Lamar limited, like if we get Lamar, is he good? Because remember, he was bad at football in the last month prior to injury. And at that salary on DraftKings, like I think everyone would then jam him in thinking he's a good play. And maybe he is. And if he's at 3%, like who could say that's probably good ownership to roster Lamar Jackson if no one else is going to. But at that salary, I do wonder like if anyone actually would avoid that. And so just worried about this game overall. And on the Bengals side, not just the blitz passing for Joe Burrow, but just the fact that this team has shown us what they want to do since they returned from their bye all year long, really. But in their last 5 games out of their bye, they have the 3rd highest run play rate on first down, averaging just 3.5 yards per carry. This past week, they ran on 17 of 22 first downs. They are not an explosive offense. They just got by because the Broncos can't move the ball at all. And so it's just pretty concerning, honestly. There are more ways to see this game going wrong than it is right. And early in the week, it seems the one that's going to catch steam. And so like, that's why I'm pretty concerned overall about rostering players in this one. We'll see where we get to.
I mean, when a receiver has 200 yards against the team and plays them again, people are going to find an easy path to get there.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like also the slate breakers and Mark Andrews and Tyler Huntley the week after. And I do admittedly have this stigma to where like I don't want to go back to the good player unless you're Cooper Kupp or Jonathan Taylor, because I understand now that you have to play them. But like 1 week later in a different matchup altogether, we talked about why we love the Ravens, the Packers so much last week. This week, like we can poke holes in it. So it's just scary. Like I'm really worried about this matchup, honestly.
You like any of the running backs? Anybody for Baltimore? I mean, it's just I don't like throwing darts there. Things can happen, but it's hard to predict that any of these guys for Baltimore, as far as the running backs, like a Freeman or a Murray. Yeah.
Well, the issue
with crickets.
Well, no. Well, the 2 games prior to last week, at least Latavius Murray literally only totaled 5 touches. Like it was all Devontae Freeman. But then this past week, they got Murray involved out of nowhere for 8 touches, including 7 carries. And so like Devontae Freeman can get by as a sneaky cheap pivot if he's the only one. But when Murray's even sprinkling in for 5+ touches, like that's not enough. Like at this stage of his career, you need Freeman to get everything. And so not for me.
Rich, you weren't too quick to answer that one, so I imagine you're not a fan either. That's kind of where I'm at as well too. Feel free to say
no.
Otherwise.
I mean, listen, I'm not gonna push anyone away for anything they want to do, but there's no way a Ravens running back is gonna make my player pool.
That's pretty much where I'm at too. We've seen Andrews. Rich Andrews has gotten loose heavily in the last 2 games, mostly with Huntley, or at least a game and a half or whatever it may be. 2 of his 3 biggest games in the season, a ton of targets as well too. We know how tight ends can separate themselves sometimes in the slate. How much is he a priority? Is he better, Rich? I mean, the sample size isn't huge, obviously, but would you kind of sort of somewhat maybe want Huntley if you're going to play Andrews? Does that make him a little bit more appealing, or is it small sample stuff?
I mean, the intermediate efficiency for Huntley has been really good the past 2 games. I mean, the low A.dot high efficiency passes. So, I mean, I don't have a problem. But I mean, Andrews he hasn't had fewer than 8 targets in a game since week 7. So you're getting the volume you're paying for. I mean, this is the number 1 tight end scorer through fantasy at this point. Kelsey on Thursday reclaimed it, and Mark Andrews is like, nah. Bring it back over here. So, I mean, it's kind of, what it's interesting is, we talk about like the, tight ends, but the top of the tight end position has been popping off to end this season.
It's awesome.
If you have good tight ends, like they've been going ham, like all these guys. I know Darren Waller's been hurt and, Hoxcamp, all these other guys are smashing. If you made the playoffs and you had George Kittle, Kelsey last week, Mark Andrews, like these guys are delivering bombs.
Gronk as well.
Yeah, Gronk. Well, Gronk ran into
I know it was 2 catch, but you still got 12 targets. Like you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, the tight end position at the top has been hot.
John, you got anything to add as far as Andrews?
No, Andrews. Fairly simple. If you play Huntley, that's who you pair him with. I understand people are going to chase the Rashad Bateman, 50 routes on 52 dropbacks, 1 catch for 5 yards. Nope, nothing against it. Not egregious. No big deal. I understand chasing it. I chased Robbie Anderson for a couple of weeks. So who amongst us cast the first stone? But, I think Andrews is still like significantly the higher ceiling if you can get there, clearly.
I feel like we haven't said much about Mixon. Mixon's playing in this game, right? I know he was dealing with something, but I saw a note that I guess he looked fine or good enough.
He was full practice today. Shocking, actually, but full practice. They said he's going to be limited all week. And, I think he's in my pool for sure, because that's how this game screws up is Joe Mixon goes off and it slows everything down. Like that's what they want to do. They want to run the ball. And if Mixon's suddenly at full health, why the hell not? So yeah, I think Mixon's a really good pay up spot.
Yeah, and you say pay up, but it's not even like this exorbitant price. 7.5 on FanDuel. We've seen a much more expensive than that, and 6.9 on DK. That's playable. Rich Mixon?
I don't know. I hate playing running backs against the Ravens so much, man.
Fair.
I mean, they jam up the box. They're number 1 in the NFL in rate of runs to go for 5 or more yards. The first time these teams played, Mixon, he had 59 yards and a touchdown. He got there at the end of the long touchdown run. The other thing with Mixon is that, they just don't throw to him anymore. He doesn't catch the ball. I mean, it's all, his ceiling is totally tied to the games that he catches the ball. A lot of people were talking about like the touchdown streak he was on, but no, look at every good game he's had in terms of fantasy. They all come when they threw him the football, and he has 9 games at 2 or fewer receptions. And in those 9 games, he's been higher than the RB23 in scoring just once. It's has been his whole career, man. We just can't get over this hump to where he's used on long down and distances and used in the passing game consistently. And like, here we are at this crossroads again at this point of the season, just complaining about him being an early down grinder and not catching the football. It's frustrating. It's because he is a good pass catcher.
We got anything else here, boys? Moving on. We are moving on. The featured game number 3, Tampa at Carolina. Carolina getting 11 points. The total here is 44, which I would venture is probably the lowest Tampa total on the season, possibly. Just sort of a thought process there. Of course, Tampa without Godwin, that's going to hurt them a good bit. Without Fournette as well. This is where our cheapies are, right, John? This is where it kind of like makes stuff work. Depending on where you're shopping, as far as Antonio Brown, 7K on FanDuel, 4.9 on DK. Ronald Jones, presumably the number 1 running back now, 5.4 on FanDuel, 5.1 on DK. And then we'll start talking about Tyler Johnson and the guys like that as well too. But yeah, talk about this Tampa offense, John, and Ronald Jones and Antonio Brown season, especially.
Did you say Antonio Brown was 4.9?
He's 4.9 on DK.
He's 4.9 on DK, which is that's.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I've been frustrated all day because
4.9. You said it and like it just kind of went 4.9.
Dude, yeah. James Robinson's 5.9, Antonio Brown 4.9, Ronald Jones even on FanDuel is pretty egregious considering their pricing. Like to put him at what is he, 5,100 or 5,400 on FanDuel?
He's 54, but they played on Sunday night, so I don't mind that. Yeah, Ron John snuck through because they played on Sunday night. I'm more upset by Justin Jackson's pricing on both sites because Austin Eckler almost missed the previous week, so it was already a warning for them to bump up his price because both sites jammed up P. Ryan. But 4.9 for Antonio Brown. I didn't even look at that. That's absolutely insane.
And what's most frustrating is that remember his timeline for his ankle injury, because I've had people ask me this. The game he was supposed to return from injury was the 6 weeks of that timeline. They said 4 to 6 weeks. It was the 6th week, and so he was coming back. So he basically got an extra 3 weeks of rehab and should be 100% now at 4.9. So 90% Antonio Brown. Get ready to swallow that chalk. Nonetheless, it's interesting spot for the Bucks because, without Chris Godwin, Tyler Johnson displays, without Mike Evans, Brashad Perryman, most likely in his place, assuming he tests out from the COVID list. Maybe they're not the team, especially against the Panthers defense. We know the pass rush is how the Panthers stopping the pass as well. Maybe they're not the team we've seen that passes the ball at the second highest rate from neutral game script. Maybe they do even sink back to 10th highest league average, gifting more carries to the early down workhorse in this situation, Ronald Jones. And so that's the question I'm asking myself. Is this even the same passing offense without the talent to pass? Antonio Brown's awesome, but Tyler Johnson and Brashad Perryman, they're not Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And so I do wonder if it's still run heavy game script and backdooring touchdowns is how we get there in FanDuel, and 20 plus carries for Ronald Jones against this defense. That's fine at his price on FanDuel in particular. And so that's where I start with this game and how I'm going to approach it.
John, do you think Brown, is there any kind of easing in or just I know you just talked about it, but how do you know? Game action, live game action is just sort of it's different than practice and all that. And you think it just say, and he wasn't even getting 100%, but of course Godwin and Evans were there too. But you think he just steps in and gets 70% of the snaps, which is obviously that should be enough. That should be fine, especially on DK. FanDuel, a little bit different conversation, but he's the first player putting cash games, probably one of the first games on DK. And we talked about it. Well, how do you find the salary to get Cooper Kupp? Here's one of the places. Your thoughts as far as that.
It's not only that, but remember, even let's just go back to week 1 against the Cowboys, prime time. Antonio Brown was a wide receiver 1, even with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin healthy. Now imagine him surrounded by Tyler Johnson and Brashad Perryman. Brown has finished as a top 12 receiver in 3 of his 5 games this year and 5 of his last 13 regular season contests since joining the Bucks. And that was with all 13 of those games so far have been played with those 2 guys. And so now as the number 1 receiver, Gronk, of course, at full health as well, but now as the number 1 receiver, it's sometimes it's simple as it's 4.9.
All right, jump in here, Rich. Brown, Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Brashad Perryman. How far deep do we go as far as dissecting these receivers? Of course, Brown is in his own tier, and then I guess Tyler Johnson and Perryman, and then Scotty Miller's probably after that. Is it worth digging that far? Do we have to on this slate? And I guess we'll find out come Sunday. But as of right now, I don't know if we need to do that. But yeah, any thoughts there as far as the receiving core for Tampa?
I mean, the Bucs wide receivers had 5 full games together, and Antonio Brown led the team in targets, catches, and receiving yards, and with 4 touchdowns. And he only ran a route on 65% of the dropbacks, which was 64th among all wide receivers. Now he's going to be a full-time player. We have a pretty limited sample of him playing without some of the Bucs guys, but in week 17 last year, Mike Evans missed the game and he had 14 targets. I imagine we're going to see something similar also. And this is, a small sample of him playing this year. When he played, he absolutely eviscerated man coverage, which the Panthers play at the 7th highest rate in the league. 19.5 yards per catch, 3.8 yards per route run against man coverage earlier this season. So, I mean, 4.9 is that I still can't get past that. I mean, even I was like, I was like, damn, 7K on FanDuel, like he's still pretty cheap there, but 4.9 is like, there's no way he should be in anything like his cash. He's gonna be 100% owned. He should be. There's no reason not to not play him at that price.
The tournament guys are salivating though. Like for tournaments, it's a very interesting fade. And if he doesn't score a touchdown and he gets 7 for 70.
I'd much rather take my chances fading Ronald Jones at 5K than Antonio Brown at 4.9 on a full PPR site.
We don't know Le'Veon Bell's involvement just yet, but just even this past week, whenever Leonard Fournette left the game, Keyshawn Vaughn outsnapped Ronald Jones on conversion downs, 3rd and 4th down, 6-2. We've seen even in the past, going back to last year, Vaughn played the 2-minute drill over Ronald Jones when he was starting. So like Ronald Jones ain't catching passes. He's basically Jeff Wilson in a much better offense, which is fine. Again, on FanDuel, we can get there. But again, on DraftKings, like there is reason to fade Ronald Jones knowing he's not going to catch passes.
Le'Veon Bell was like talking smack to like Jake Paul like a week ago, and he wanted to box him. Wasn't that him? I feel like that was him. I think he wanted to get involved in boxing. He's like, oh, another team wants me. All right, let's go. Like I can't imagine he's going to take a huge chunk, but you never know, I suppose.
Well, I hope it goes better for him than it did Frank Gore.
Yeah. Well, then it did Le'Veon Bell. Like, boxing wise, yeah. I hope football this time around goes better than it did for Le'Veon Bell.
What number is he wearing? He's got to scrap the 17. The 17 wasn't working.
I wanted to make sure that was Le'Veon Bell, right? I think he was the one that was talking smack to one of the Paul brothers. He challenged him to a fight. I think
you're talking to the wrong group of people.
But Daigle's right though about this game could just be. I mean, the Panthers are already talking about playing multiple quarterbacks early in the week. Like this game could be. I mean, they already have a 17-point team total, and they're 10-point home underdogs. Like that's. I mean, it could be a game where they're just like the Bucs don't have to do a lot. And they're missing a bunch of guys on defense too. Levante David's not playing. Like it could be a game where they just try to get the hell out of here. I don't know, but with Brady's red ass getting shut out on Sunday night, like I don't know, he'll probably want to come out here and throw for 4 touchdowns.
That was the counter, right? Supposedly angry Brady. Obviously, his weapons won't be as good as their own. And he's, in theory, like everybody wants to say, he's fighting for the MVP. And he's been a greedy Gus all season long. Those 1-yard touchdown passes, those 2-yard touchdown passes, as opposed to just running it in. Does that stuff factor in? I have no idea, but you feel like he wants to bounce back, right? We can create these narratives. Rich, is that real? I don't know. Maybe, possibly.
I mean, he's so. I mean, he's such a like lemon after games when they lose and talks to media. All his post game stuff is so different when they win and lose. I could definitely see him carrying that chip for sure, but I mean, it's hard to quantify or anything. It's the Panthers have a good defense. Like they're not terrible. Yeah. So like that's the other thing too. It's not like they can it's not Brady can just magically say, I want to throw 5 touchdowns this game and like poof it into the air. Like the Panthers are still going to like be an aggressive defense, which could lead to some big plays, but they're also in terms of stopping quarterbacks. I mean, they just held Josh Allen, got there for fantasy, but under 7 yards per pass attempt. They're 4th in yards allowed per pass in the league. They're 5th in passing points allowed per game. So it's not like they're just going to willingly let Brady throw for 5 touchdowns too.
The counter to that though is that Carolina's offense is probably going to put their defense in bad predicaments.
Right. I mean, they're not going to do anything. The Panthers are misery. Like it's pure misery watching any of their offense. Like for the last month, it's just and it was prior when Darnold was playing too. That last we had one game like Cam when he started against Washington was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and then it's just been darkness.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys are following basketball, but like Joe Johnson and Lance Stevenson are back. Like Cam is back.
This is even as someone working, grinding football every single day, I feel sorry for the basketball people. Every time I look up, it's worse than football. And it's every day. Every day.
World's smallest violin is playing for me, but I'm exhausted. I'm digging into basketball all day today, the last several days.
Hey, you only have till June 2022. No big deal.
It's been an exhausting day. Just exhausting week altogether. But again, things can be, I'm not digging ditches. I'm not complaining. So we featured this game, John, right? You picked Tampa Bay versus Carolina, but is there anybody on Carolina you can point to as a run back?
This is the worst take I'm going to have. I hope y'all are ready.
No.
I don't, if you're going to play Justin Jackson, if everyone's going to play Justin Jackson, maybe I can get behind Amir Abdullah on DraftKings. Just in last week, we know he's a pass catching back, 25 routes to Chuba Hubbard's 14, also 4 targets in back-to-back games. Abdullah was the RB11 overall last week in PPR because that's all you need. You just need to score a touchdown. That's it. We know the Panthers are going to be from behind. Perhaps we take away Cam Newton's rushing equity for some Sam Darnold snaps because we've already been told he's going to play. And so, it's just a cheap pivot and genuinely the one I'm most confident in right now if everyone's going to play Justin Jackson.
Rich, you want to?
You don't have to comment. We can just move on. No one needs to talk about how bad of a play that is. I'm just letting you know. And I'm sober. This is not Christmas. I'm sober.
Is that David Johnson?
Not David. This play is sponsored by David Johnson, but it's not David Johnson.
I will say you can't do worse. You can't do worse than the David Johnson call. So
that's true. He had 10 touches in 18 minutes. I was on to something. And then he got injured.
Rich, you got anything at all as far as Carolina? You don't have to say about Abdullah, but is there any player that looks like you could potentially roster them or?
It's rough, man. I mean, they're asking me to put some players on my team that have a 17-point implied team total and might rotate quarterbacks. It's real tough.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And I know people like in their scripts, they build in run backs. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do that.
I will say though, we didn't talk about it though, but I mean, the clear signal, I believe though, that what we've seen is that with Godwin being the guy that's hurt and, Evans might miss too, but with Perriman coming back, it might throw a wrench in thing. I do believe Tyler Johnson will play the slot. He played it all last year when Chris Godwin missed, and he's built to play there. The reason he struggled when Antonio Brown got hurt is because he was playing out of position. Like he can't separate, like he can't get open. So like he's built to play inside the slot. I do believe he's the guy that will get the biggest bump of the ancillary jabronis that get the uptick here.
If you're picking amongst Johnson, Miller, Perriman, and Darden, Johnson's your favorite.
Yes.
Right.
But Gronk should get an elevation, right? We kind of touched on and mentioned him in passing. How much do we prioritize Gronk? Is he, I assume he's not going to be hiding on the slate. Does he become more appealing for you, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have Kittle. We may not have Kelsey. So we're down to Andrews and Gronk, and there's a clear, pricing. There's a salary cap there. Well, there may not be a salary cap this week. I don't know.
Especially because everyone wants to play Noah Gray. Maybe pricing doesn't even matter this week.
But I mean, Gronk's a different player than what he was last year. This guy's playing full time. He's getting a ton of targets. He's running those deep crossers and those overs that we like. I mean, last week it just didn't happen. I mean, you'll take 11 targets from Gronk anytime you can get them, no matter the results. So if we can come back and get close to another double-digit targets with a guy that has that much touchdown equity too, why not?
All right, let's move on. Before we talk about our favorite players position by position, I do want to thank our sponsor, Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. You buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50 using the promo code Grinders. Now get this, if you do not turn a profit this week, Jock Market, they're going to cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market in the app or Play stores. Check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com. Use the promo code Grinders, GRINDERS, for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. By the way, before we do that, shout out to, we're going to talk about position by position players, but Shout out to those that partook in our chat on YouTube. Hit that like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Thanks for sticking with us. Week 16. I asked them, I said, we talked about good, bad movies, and I besmirched Saving Silverman. I said I actually like it as a good, bad movie, but Rhino says, I love this show, but if I ever hear Saving Silverman labeled as a bad movie again, I'm out for good. So I don't know if Rhino's still with us or not, but yeah.
And remember, I corrected you. I said, no, that's actually a good movie.
And Matt had a chalk answer too. Favorite bad movie, good, bad movie. Is that just a good movie, or is that a good, bad
Which movie?
Roadhouse?
That's a good movie.
Okay.
Well, it's a good movie.
It's ridiculous, but it's good,
I mean,
right?
I was thinking too after we got down because I was on spot, like, because that's my wheelhouse. That's like when I grew up, like, mid late 80s. That's my jam. Because like I was thinking like all the Van Damme movies are my shit. Like Hard Target is like Hard Target where he grabs the snake and like punches the snake. Wilford Brimley speaks with like a Creole accent in that movie. He roundhouses a dude off a motorcycle. Like, yeah, that's excellent bad movie.
Kickboxer, Sudden Death.
Bloodsport was my favorite growing up.
Bloodsport's the chalk. Yeah, I think that's the chalk for sure.
It's
Hard Target was the one I kept always going to. It was the underrated bad movie.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't my internet. That's okay. There we go, Dean. You're back now.
Am I back? I was asking, Rich, are you a Van Damme guy or are you a Seagal guy? If you had to choose.
I was more of a Van Damme guy, but I didn't mind because, Seagal was always breaking someone's forearm every movie. Someone was getting forearm broke in Seagal movie. But remember, what was Sudden Death with Van Damme where he became the goalie? He kills the guy with the chicken bone. He kills the guy with the chicken bone in that movie.
He had to find a bomb in the hockey arena. And his way to get on the ice, I think, was to be goalie because you can't wearing a mask. But
he was like a minor league goalie too. Like he had like a back. It was like his moment too. Like it was.
Is that true? He was like,
isn't that not? I mean, I may be wrong. I believe part of the thing was he was like a failed goalie too. So like it was like his moment. Like he got to make the save and then made the legitimate save.
How convenient! Like that just works out like that. John, you want to add to this conversation of Seagal versus?
I'm just enjoying. I'm just listening. That's it. I didn't watch much Seagal. I don't know why. It just never crossed my path. Was more or less just Van Damme for action movies.
What was the movie Seagal made with DMX?
Oh, not Play It to the Bone or something to the bone.
Something I need to watch.
Cradle to the Grave.
Apparently,
Cradle to the Grave. Cradle to the Grave.
Play It to the Bone's like a Woody Harrelson movie or something like that. But Seagal these days is like an honorary. He's like a sheriff for Louisiana somewhere, and I think it's a reality show built around it. So yeah, there have at it. I don't know what channel it's on, but check your local listings. They don't sponsor this show. Quarterbacks. John, we have a game in Houston. Justin Herbert's playing quarterback. Mahomes, who really knows he's throwing the ball to, but Mahomes on the board for sure. Jalen Hurts. He's got some legs. He's playing the Giants. Allen, not a great matchup, but it's still Josh Allen versus New England. Where are you looking as far as some quarterbacks we've yet to talk about, John?
Yeah, it's just hard to discuss Mahomes right now. One, it was early, but not even without Kelsey and Hill starting that conversation. Also against the Chargers, they only got 2 drives in, but Kelsey only had 1 catch in that game before Derwin James got injured. So Chiefs offense probably still just fine, but not one I think scares me just yet. Famous last words. I think right now, really, I only have while we're pending the Chargers offense, Jalen Hurts is really the one that sticks out. It's not a Giants defense problem like Dak struggle. It's a Dak problem right now. Jalen Hurts averaging more rushing fantasy points per game than Miles Sanders. Only Joe Mixon, James Conner, and Jonathan Taylor have more rushing touchdowns. So really just a floor spot for Jalen Hurts in that game. And that's honestly that's about it right now while everything shakes out for me.
What do you have for us, Rich?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Especially now that Justin Fields looks like he has a hurt ankle, so that's not very cool. We talked about Cousins, Stafford. We talked about Burrow. If we get Huntley, yeah, I mean it pretty much covers it. Herbert, very good if you want to pay for him against the Texans. That's about it. Right. I don't have anything cute at the quarterback position this week. At this juncture,
with Brandon Cooks out or perhaps out, we can't even tout Davis Mills again.
I will say, I am very, very much. I didn't think I would be this upset that Jared Goff might not play, but I've got the Sun God on a bunch of rosters that are still alive. And man, Tim Boyle was so bad earlier in the year. I don't think I can play him. I don't know if I can play the Sun God with Tim Boyle.
Is that the backup? It's not Blau, or is he not? I don't. Who
Is Blau playing,
backup?
or is it going to be Boyle? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
Was Blau? I thought Blau was on the COVID list at that time. I could be wrong though.
God, I hope. I think Boyle was. Oh my gosh, Boyle was so bad.
I mean,
You're hoping for David Blau.
Yes.
Blau was bad last year too, as well. But yeah, he wasn't as bad as Boyle.
His name.
But listen, the point is, I didn't think
Blau.
we'd be missing Jared Goff, but Jared Goff actually 3 of the past 4 weeks has played really well.
Yeah,
and I'm very sad. I'm very sad about his development.
Don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yes.
Can always be worse. Testing that theory. Let's talk about some running backs, Rich. Robinson potentially gets loose here against the Jets. I saw the Jets had a slew of players that ended up on the COVID list today. We'll see how that goes down. I don't know. It's hard to speculate on a Wednesday night. There is a difference in price on Robinson. On DK, he's 5'9". On FanDuel, he's what, like 7'3", 7'4"?
He's 8'2".
He's 8'2".
Oh, okay.
They don't joke around. They do this, every now and then. They don't joke around, and they did not wait for it.
So the analysis, Rich, is that James Robinson is a good play on DK, and on FanDuel, you can play him, but not a lock and load. Is that reasonable, son?
Yeah, probably. 8.2 is a significant price bump. I assume that something part of the algorithm is like previous ownership helps bump it up too, but because he was so popular on FanDuel last week. But you play anyone against the Jets. Obviously, the ghost of Duke Johnson rolled out and set career highs. The same thing. Daigle danced around Justin Jackson a few times. But we just watched the Rashad Penny have the best game of his life against Houston, and then the following week, allow James Robinson to get there as the chalky play. Like, some of these defenses are just so damn bad right now. The Jets are just lost on defense. Now they're potentially going to have COVID go through this defense. It's not like James Robinson is sexy, but everyone gets there against the Jets. Duke Johnson just had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns on a team that can't run the football.
And he got paid. He got signed. He's got to send like a fruit basket, right? Or something like that. Good for him.
Listen, that was vindication. This is the year of the ghost. Daigle brought up Amir Abdullah. Laquan Treadwell is out here scoring 10 PPR points a game.
Yep.
Cordero Patterson's like offensive player of the year. Like all the dynasty ghosts are like back. Like Dante Foreman is a RB1 now. All the ghosts are in play.
John, if Eckler is not a go and it's Jackson, is it clearly Jackson? What's the split with him and like Kelly?
It is clearly Jackson between the 20s. I'm worried that Josh Kelly, even last week in outrunning Jackson 2-1 inside the 5-yard line, like is going to siphon goal line touches, and then everyone will be upset about it. And it's like, no, we've already seen the evidence that this is what's going to happen anyways. And that, like I said, that's not saying Justin Jackson's not a good play. It's just a concerning good play, since if Eckler's out, he would clearly be 30-40% given his salary, a little bit higher on FanDuel, but his salary on DraftKings to be 4.2, I believe, fairly cheap. Everyone would go there. Just like we saw, and we guessed it right, that Michael Carter being that price would get steamed, because that's just what everyone tries to do. So yeah, I think it's somewhat concerning that he would get out of hand.
Who else do you have on your list, John?
CEH, we'll see what happens with Kelsey and Hill. I think CEH anyways is a good play just to have his most snaps and highest backfield touch rate since week 1. So maybe he gets involved a little more. That's what happened anyways in the passing game than Darrell Williams' pass game. Maybe that usage sticks. It could have been just because it was an anomaly game. But yeah, I like CEH quite a bit as a pivot, even if Kelsey and Hill comes back. That's kind of a way I was leaning against this Steelers defense that now we've seen, it's not just back-to-back games. It goes back all the way to 6 games. We talked about Foreman last week as we try to attack running backs against their front 7. Miles Sanders is still interesting. Yes, Jordan Howard could come in to put it away. We saw that on Tuesday night where Sanders out-touched Jordan Howard until the fourth quarter, 20-6, and then 29 till the final drive when Howard iced the game with 6 carries on the last possession. But, to get to that point for Howard to come into the game, you still need someone to score touchdowns. Now, that hasn't been Miles Sanders at all this year, in fact. But, if Jalen Hurts can't score like every little bunny touchdown. Also, like what happens outside the 5-yard line. So really, we're just hoping for touchdown regression, knowing Sanders has had 20 carries or at least 20 touches in back-to-back games. And then perhaps let's see what happens in this game with Justin Fields, but maybe David Montgomery, knowing he's being used as more of a pass catching back, despite the fact that Damian Williams has been back for 2 consecutive games now. I could see myself attacking that too, even though you would be worried about volume in that situation for both offenses, since Seattle is just so freaking putrid right now.
Where's Wilson going next year? I'm saying Denver. How about that? No, New York. Let's go New York. He's going to the Giants. Does that work? Everybody go with that? Is he still good?
Do the Giants want Russell Wilson?
Is he just bad
I mean,
now?
they don't even have a GM yet, so
That's true.
Yeah, it's a mess. Like Carroll or Russ, one of them has to. I mean, I would get rid of Carroll just because he's living in 1970 or so. But as far as his football, whatever. I don't want to go on a whole rant. But hey, Rich, give me some running back thoughts here. And the one that's interesting to me, and I don't know what to do with them because they have not been giving him a full allotment. There's a line I remember seeing it was a week or two ago talking about like easing it back on the veterans. We saw him just chilling on the sidelines a couple weeks ago in the fourth quarter. You know what I'm talking about? It's Cordell Patterson. Like in theory, this is a good matchup versus Detroit, but how much of a chunk is he going to get? Like if they give him 2/3, does he need 2/3 against Detroit? I want thoughts on Patterson, Rich.
Well, last week everything went back. I mean, he bounced back up. He went up to 62% of snaps, 62% of backfield touches. It was his highest rates in a game since week 7. They just did nothing in the game. So I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, if he's gonna get that kind of usage, I'm more intrigued. Again, I hate to keep calling back on all these running backs, but like, why the hell did they stop throwing the ball to him? I mean, he only had 2 catches though. He now has 10 catches in his past 5 games, 3 or fewer catches in each game. After he had 5 or more catches in 6 of his first 8 games of the year. That's the guy. Like Patterson was like, he's turned into like a full-fledged like running back instead of like the Swiss Army knife that he was early in the season. And we want the other guy back. Bring back the guy that was successful.
It still looks so weird. Like he was 84 out of the backfield all the time, and this just always looks strange to me. What do you have as who else is on your list there, Rich? Did anybody that John not cover? Anybody you want to double down on?
Yeah, Montgomery's fine. CH is cool for a couple of reasons if they have to like acquiesce and like go more of a running game. Because the other thing too that we have to remember with guys getting cleared, because I know it's like the new thing now, because now guys can get cleared. But remember, if we've seen this happen with a few players, Myles Gaskin being the latest, you were sick. Like if you come off, like there's like not only we saw with Amari Cooper, like these guys don't always come back 100% like that week. So like it's not like Tyreek, if he's able to play, or Kelsey's able to play, it's still not a given. It's the version that like they're apex. So it's just another wrench to like throw into things in this this whole paradox of trying to figure out what's going on. This NFL season is just a new wrinkle now. But we've seen now with multiple players that when they come off the COVID list, they aren't 100%. So it's different for every person. Also, the Steelers lost another defensive tackle in Chris Wormley last week, so it could be even worse for them. I mean, they've given up 907 rushing yards the last 5 games. Very much not your grandfather's Steelers defense right now at all. I like Montgomery just because you can run skinnies with him. We only have 2 more weeks to play DK Metcalf. I'm gonna go down doing it though. So I mean, how many, like it's every week. He should have 150 yards in that game last night. Mm-hmm. Like Russ is killing us, absolutely killing us. But you can just play Lockett again too if DK ends up being the cool kid play. But you can play skinnies either way with Montgomery and Seattle de facto receiver you like.
You got a thought, John?
No, Rich is just about dead on. You saw it last night in prime time. Everyone rostered him, knowing he had the 2nd or 3rd highest ceiling among all wide receivers at a cheap price across both sites in that game, and just didn't happen. And now this has been, a touchdown call back, an end zone target that Russ missed last night, wide open 2 times, I believe, that Russ overthrew him. It's just something. It's a variable every single game now.
2 weeks left to go down.
I was watching G League basketball in the NBA instead of watching the Seattle.
I mean, I would love to shade you. I would love to shade you, but did you watch any NFL this week? It's not really.
Oh no, well, I watched the Red Zone. I was all with the Red Zone, of course.
It was a pretty bad rule. Listen, was the Red Zone just tumbleweeds this week? It was the fewest amount of touchdowns scored on a Sunday with 10 or more games in 30 years.
It's been rough, man. And then I literally, it's like people say, I literally fell asleep during the Tampa Bay game at night.
Oh God, that game was down. That game. I just started working on Sunday night. I was like, screw this.
I had the Ravens Packers, so like I was getting ready, gearing up. But every other football game, yes, there were only 9 players that did good, and like the person who won the Millie Maker just happened to roster those 9 players. That's it.
Incredible. I did see that the ratings are still strong, or the Minnesota Bears game was like the highest rated game in like 15 years or so. Thank you, gambling. Thank you, DraftKings. Yep. Thank you, FanDuel. Thank you, Caesars. The ratification of gambling across the country.
87 freaking passing yards. Like, how do you reach that point?
We had 2 quarterbacks win last week because Wentz threw 50. They won with 50. He threw 57 yards.
5 completions.
And they won. Cousins won. So we had 2 quarterbacks win with fewer. 2 weeks ago, we had a team win with a quarterback threw 3 passes. This is the NFL. This is the NFL now.
This is not a great product right now.
It's bad, man. It's flat out. It's really bad.
Yeah, I hope it bounces back. I hope it gets better soon enough. All right,
people.
Let's talk about.
There are people clamoring, saying that once this product is gone, like after the Super Bowl, that we're all just gonna in 2 weeks we're gonna be wishing we had more football. Let me tell you something. I will not be wishing I had more 2021 football at all.
I haven't watched Succession yet. I haven't watched Hawkeye yet. I haven't watched Dexter yet. I
hear Yellowstone is good. I'm gonna watch
Yellowstone. I've got stuff to get to, man. I ain't worried about any more Bears Vikings games.
Your DVR is full. It's waiting to be watched.
Oh, you need to watch Squid Games first. Please put that atop your list.
Oh, Rich, you really take a day off and watch something.
I can't take a day off. The NFL plays every day. You keep moving. Now they play every day.
They play every day.
I know.
Now they play every day. I can't what the hell, man? They're playing at Christmas. I can't even get away.
By the way, the Dexter season's been a lot of fun, but Succession is just
fabulous. Well, I love Succession, so I've been wanting to get
fabulous. I highly recommend.
I've been trying to avoid spoilers like crazy, man. It's rough. It's rough in these streets.
I went Twitter dark for 3 days because I was behind, but I finally on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday afternoon, I finally knocked it out and it was worth it. Do your best to avoid those spoilers. All right, let's talk about some receivers. Rich, you can throw some dudes out for us. You mentioned Metcalf in passing. It's been a lot of fun for your roster. Your boy Amon St. Brown, 5'6" on DK, 6'5" on FanDuel. Deontay Johnson, he didn't get his 10 targets this week. Presumably he'll get those bouncing back versus Kansas City. Who's piquing your interest here as far as the receivers?
Well, I don't know if you guys heard, but there's a Hall of Fame wide receiver on DraftKings for 4.9.
Can't get over that.
Play that guy. I do think the Seahawks guys are interesting just because I don't think anyone likes to play the Seahawks guys and they're playing the Bears and it could be just like a slog. But I mean, Chicago, they're 28th in the league in completion rate on deep throws. They're 32nd in points allowed per attempt on those passes. They're allowing a league high 9.1 yards per target to opposing wide receivers, a league high 7.7% touchdown rate. I think both those guys are in play. Pick your poison. We know they don't ever do good together. You could run it back with Montgomery in your skinnies that way. I don't know who else is even playing at wide receiver. Oh, Russell Gage has been pretty good. You can play him still. No problem with him. I don't know. Throw some other names out there.
I had Russell Gage written down. If everyone is going to go Gabriel Davis, I actually kind of think if you need to save that Isaiah McKenzie's interesting. Remember, it was week 17, but last year without Cole Beasley, McKenzie played a season high 90% of snaps, led the team with 8 targets, and had 2 jet sweeps, so a high floor, scored 2 receiving touchdowns in that game as well. Yes, Josh Allen has been miserable for his career against the Patriots. Bill Belichick has had his number, 55% completion rate, 6.6 yards per attempt, but McKenzie, like a team that doesn't want to use a running game anyways, they did so against the Panthers, but they don't want to do that. Like, McKenzie has a pretty high floor for a sneaky cheap play.
John, I'm not sure if you're prepared for this terrible question, but again, this is kind of an if fan, and like the Kansas City receivers on DK, Pringles 3.3, Hardman 3.5, Robinson 3K. of course, pending what goes on with Hill, what goes on with Kelsey to some degree, or a lot of degree. And then if Brandon Cooks doesn't go, if we have Nico Collins at 3-4, like, are we interested? Like, what can we say on a Wednesday night? Do you want to speculate or just kind of throw them out to the ether and do what you want with that?
I know people are going to be interested in Mecole Hardman and Byron Pringle, assuming they promote Mecole Hardman. I don't know if they would or not, but remember, like, he was being used. Like, he had the second most routes in the team in their first 8 games before he got demoted before their bye. And he was only averaging 4 targets per game because as an NFL receiver, you still have to earn targets. And it's just something, even with the extra opportunity, he literally has not been able to do in his career just yet. And he's still very young, but not a player I'm excited about. Byron Pringle hasn't flashed a ceiling as well anytime he's been given a chance. So that's why CEH to me is really interesting, because while everyone gravitates towards the cheap receiver pivots, I would just go the running back. And I think that's the better play overall. And Nico Collins, I guess, sure. As someone who played Nico Collins on DraftKings last week, because I did get on Davis Mills, who finishes the QB 10, I believe, by the way, on the week. Until that monsoon, it was pretty fun, honestly. But is someone we need? Like, sure, you can get the targets down below, since we would assume he's going to take Brandon Cooks targets, but also look back to even Cooks' 22-yard touchdown. Like, that was a screen that Cooks wormed in between tacklers. Like, Nico Collins can't do that. So I don't know. It's not like not the same type of targets.
Nico Collins also was hurt, only ran around on 55% of the dropbacks. Got to monitor him, make sure he's full strength. Also on DraftKings, like, if you're messing around with any of those guys, why not just play Laquan Treadwell at 3-5? Like, a dude that's actually getting targets and has gotten there the last 4 weeks at that price. It's not like he's getting there in totality because he's still attached to Trevor Lawrence. But he's 3-5. Like, if you're going to go 3-3 Pringle or 3-4 Nico Collins and just hope to get 9 targets, why not just play the guy that's getting the targets at 3-5?
I played Marvin Jones, and like, knowing Laquan Treadwell still was the guy, I was like, maybe there's usage change. Little did I know that Darrell Bevel wouldn't even be calling plays. It would be Schottenheimer. So although there was a coaching change, there was not really a play calling change. Schottenheimer's the reason, he was fired in Seattle for a reason. So yeah, it did not go well with Marvin Jones.
Rich,
well, that game too, that game had
a
a crazy 2-quarter downpour. Then the passing game just died for both sides. No one could throw downfield for the remainder of that game. It was gross. It just got real gross. Because I bet the over in that game, and I had to sweat that thing out until Cooks bailed me out at the end.
Rich, any tight ends that jumped on the page for you this week? We talked about Andrews. Who knows about Kelsey? We'll see. Stay tuned. I mean, you're not even want to hear the first name that's hitting optimals right now in DK at 30%. He's failed us so much this year.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts, right?
I'm so tired.
Listen, only 2 more weeks to play Kyle Pitts.
Get it in.
Get that. Try to get that second touchdown in. The first drive of the game, the 49ers, Jermichael Hasty fumbles the kickoff. The Falcons are going in to try to punch this thing in, and the first pass they throw in the end zone goes to Lee Smith, and I'm what? This team.
And Pitts was blocking, right? Pitts was in the field of blocking, correct?
They threw to Lee Smith. They dialed the play to Lee Smith. The week before, they dial up a design call to Hayden Hurst. They did throw to Pitts in the end zone on the 4th down play call, luckily, but when they got dialed up that play to Lee Smith, I just could do anything but just eternally laugh. This is what's going on here. It's hilarious. But hey, listen, he's got 20% of team targets over the last 8 games. The Lions suck. You only got 2 weeks left to play him. If not here, why not? Why not, man? But I believe he is popping though, because the matchup and the amount of targets he gets.
Yeah, I'm gonna check FanDuel in a second, see what they have over there. Pitts as well on FanDuel, of course, because why not? Conklin right after is the second guy for what it's worth. And again, this is Wednesday night. Who knows? Stay tuned. John, tight ends, do you have a thought on Pitts? Are you? I'm beaten down. Playing him is just too much. I surrender, man.
No thoughts on Pitts. You either play him or don't, and I choose not to, and it's worked out well in my DFS career so far, at least for this year. Goddard got the Tuesday night price bump, so even after back-to-back career highs in receiving yards, elite usage nonetheless as well. Like Goddard at 5.9 on FanDuel, still pretty freaking cheap for his ceiling. I imagine that's where a lot of people will go. And then let's see how the COVID thing shakes out. But the unfortunate Donald Parham injury, not to mention like Jalen Guyton missing, maybe a little bit of Jared Cook here mixed in as well.
Oh boy,
there it is. I was wondering who the cheapie was. Like, who is that? Is that the best cheapie we have to consider?
I mean, it is the Texans. Like, for all the reasons we're playing Justin Jackson, why the hell am I not playing Jared Cook?
Trying
to think. It's week 15. No, week 16 actually. Yeah.
Is there a backup tight end on Kansas City we can like put like just in the conversation?
They're going to play Noah Gray, and it's not going to go well. Having said that, I will say he is the only other tight end. They don't even have another tight end on their practice squad right now since Jody Fortson, who beat out Noah Gray initially. Remember, they were healthy scratching Noah Gray because Fortson was an actual red zone threat. He's injured as well. I believe he returned to practice. He's eligible to come off injured reserve, so maybe he's in there, which would screw it all up. But if he's out, and Kelsey scratched, Noah Gray is literally the only tight end in the roster.
Is the Belldozer not
COVID list?
He's like kind of fullback. Oh, yeah, I didn't see that.
COVID list.
I missed that one too.
He's also more of a blocker. The thing about Noah Gray too is that Duke he ran 72% of his routes as a senior out of the slot, so he wasn't even like a real tight end. So, I mean, it does make sense. He's more of a receiver. That's probably why he doesn't play now, because he's, like all these guys, they're just trying to adjust in the NFL, learning how to like, oh yeah, I have to block dudes up here. Like, oh, okay. But yeah, he was literally just a slot receiver at Duke.
We're going to call it. That's the show, right? That's it. We're going to finish on Noah Gray. I think that's the old Georgia stanza.
I mean, did you want a Zach Gentry take?
If you have one, by all means.
Don't. He's just really tall.
He's also going to play every snap. That's your take.
He's really tall.
Actually tall.
Yeah, he's really tall.
John, if for whatever reason the people don't know where to find you in week 16, I know it's ridiculous to even that, but like we got to get the plugs in just in case for those that are still hanging around. Tell the people where they can find you around all the socials and all that good stuff.
At Not Jay Daigle on Twitter, NBCSportsEdge.com, where I will be going back right after this and updating the waivers, since Yahoo was kind enough to push waivers to Thursday. So let's just work and watch football every single week this week. Why the hell not? So I'll be updating the waivers for you. If you want to check in an hour just to make sure all your ducks in a row for the COVID list, for injuries, I have it all written down behind me. I'd have to make sure everything's sorted, and a good football show on iTunes.
Rich?
Yeah, at Lord Reeves on Twitter. Worksheet, sharp football analysis every Wednesday with my guys Daigle and Dean. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody. I hope everyone has a really good holiday. We'll be back next week, burning it down, heading into New Year.
You can find Rich on his couch in a couple weeks, catching up in the DVR as well. Or
no spoilers. You keep them spoilers off my timeline.
Oh, if you put any spoilers in the chat or whatever, you're banned. That's it. You're out. One strike. It's a one strike rule. I've unfollowed people that dropping spoilers live. Like, you really have to say like, oh, what a great survivor. Like, you have to take that out there. All right. Yeah. Merry Christmas on that note. Happy holidays. If you're traveling, safe travels. Everybody stay safe. That was the NFL Pick 6 show, week 16. Rich Hribar, John Daigle. That was football. I was Dean. RotoGrinders. Hit that like button. We're out of here. Holler.